Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 is the key instruction that allows the whole church to properly function. And our specially gifted people tonight have no trouble with this one, at least in the strengths to apply it. They are compelled, actually, by the nature of their heart to do so. Consider one another to build up love and good works. God has gifted each member of the body with varying abilities to bless the whole by each fulfilling his or her role. And tonight, we are looking at the gift of mercy. The gift of mercy, it is a command, it is a value rooted in a principal trait of God's nature, but it is as well a gift. People are especially gifted in this way. And so it's more than what you might think. Spiritual gifts. We've looked at each one of these and have learned a lot more about them than we had originally thought. Spiritual gifts are those divinely given, but also providentially honed abilities or skills that children of God have enhanced by the presence of God, who are actively yielding to his will to work and to serve the body with joy and also mutual blessing. We've listed that there are some gifts that no longer need to be here today. They have ceased. Their purpose is gone. But after accomplishing their purpose, the church still has needs, and God develops his people in certain ways to meet one another's needs and for our mutual growth and development. Lesson number 8 tonight. Thank God for those people who easily show mercy. From the Greek word, I'll often say the word compassion, because by definition, their feeling and their understanding, innate understanding of another person's suffering, compels them to give aid and assistance. They can almost sense it. And I'll say tonight, they can sometimes feel it in their own way. Those who are naturally gifted in this expression of godliness do show the rest of us, who maybe aren't as gifted as they in this way, just how much room we have to grow to be more like God in the way that he is. And so we are all balancing each other, but individually we may be off balanced, maybe to an extreme in one or two ways, and that's where we help each other. I want us to remember, if you're joining us for the first time, and certainly if you're still here, it's good to remind ourselves the verses that form the foundation of our whole study. 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, 1 Peter 4:10, and Ephesians 4:15 and 16. These verses collectively teach us so much, but that each body member is gifted with its unique ability and therefore fulfills its function well. It's easy for you to do the work that you've been designed to do. And in this study, we've learned a lot about ourselves as well. I know I sure have. As Jesus began his ministry, here's a point I want to emphasize. He did not simply recruit the people who were of the same type of personality or skill. He wanted a variety of personalities and abilities with people with different backgrounds, different strengths, even, yes, different struggles to grow from each other. The more we learn about those disciples and as the apostles grew to be one, working together, we can only imagine how odd or difficult it was in some cases. Jesus picked apostles who were so different that outside of Christ would remain enemies, maybe even had killed one another. But in Christ, they grew as siblings in a royal family, each one working effectively for the highest call possible. And so just as the apostles matured to respect each other and to love each other and to appreciate the differences in abilities and, yes, even personalities, as they grew to be more like Christ, required for certain roles, Jesus has assigned to the members, just as he desired, body parts and functions so that you and I can work as a congregation of his people. Well, we've looked at a lot in this study series so far. We've looked at the server. We've looked at the teacher. We've looked at the exhorter. We've looked at the sharer, the giver, and we've also looked at the leader. We've looked at a lot. But in this lesson tonight, we will spotlight those uniquely gifted and, yes, burdened in their journey through this world. As our study continues, and even after it's over, you might reflect on what I'm about to say right now. I sometimes feel for these people. I don't know and to the degree that I relate is natural or it's been conditioned, not sure. But as I look back, I imagine what would my life be like were it not for the things that ministry has taught me over the past 15 to 20 years. And what got me into ministry in the first place? My unique blend is I want to exhort people through teaching and therefore encourage. And so that's a unique blend, and in this way show and give mercy to help in the ways that are most needed by sharing people with them the gospel. But as unique as that blend is, I can relate to some of these struggles, and I do, again, go back to what I'm about to say. I feel for these people, uniquely strengthened by this gift, because it would seem as though they are too good or tender for this harsh world. And we need people like this in the world to help us all. Bless you if you are described by our discussion tonight. Romans chapter 12, verse 8. Are you a cheerful giver of mercy? Would you rate yourself highly on the capacity to show compassion? And if so, thank you for being a light of heaven while in this selfish, sin-saturated, hurting world. It's a suffering world everywhere you look, and I can imagine how hard that really is to keep that heart. I want this lesson to edify you. I want this lesson to encourage you to keep letting the world see what it needs to be. People who are defined by compassion, by care, by empathy, by kindness, by concern. People who help others bear their burdens, like the Samaritan did to the man who was beaten and beat up by the side of the road. And Satan, of course, is by comparison. Satan beats us up. The world beats us up. And we need people to help in this way. And be like the Samaritan. Luke chapter 10, as we'll study a few verses tonight. But in our study, we will conclude by giving advice to help you, yes, you, bear certain burdens that are unique to your very, very tender heart. Offering mercy. What is it? Sometimes we emphasize mercy in the God context, and we say mercy and his forgiveness, and so we link them up as one. God's mercy is his forgiveness. We got to be careful not to do that we forget what mercy is. It's more than forgiveness. Mercy is helping those who are afflicted. That's what mercy is in our discussion anyway. It's helping those who are afflicted. Now, if someone is afflicted by sin, forgiving that person is a showing of mercy, which certainly helps. But when we feed the poor, the hungry, clothe the destitute, we are then offering mercy as well. When we give a shoulder to cry on, an open ear for someone to communicate and share with us their feelings of sadness and hurt and loneliness, we are in that way offering mercy. When the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 37, helped the beaten Jew, he was showing him mercy. Mercy, verse 37. The world often does not know what it needs. And I think sometimes about the phrases that the world produces. You hear it often. I don't need your charity. Don't show me your mercy. I don't need any of that, right? Well, pride often prevents people from accepting the very thing that they sometimes need, and they don't even know it. When I am ever in need in these ways and others, please show me your charity, your loving mercy. I'll happily accept it. Jesus concluded the parable of the Good Samaritan by saying, by implication, you go and do likewise. All these good things that he did, and he had to admit that he was the one who showed mercy to them, you go and do likewise. So we have to admit that there's responsibility that we all share to grow in this. And it's more difficult for some. If you rated yourself high on some others, some other categories, some come to my mind, you might struggle with this one, and that's understandable. But we've all got to grow in this. It's obvious that some will naturally rank higher in this category because they're naturally gifted in mercy. It's just natural for them. You don't have to tell them what to do. They are almost instinctively driven to do whatever they need to do to help. However, let's examine some of the good traits about these mercy givers, these gifted givers of mercy, as we look at the Samaritan and what he did. We've talked about this parable so many times and hundreds of lessons. Every time there's something new that gets brought up. So many dynamics, so rich. As we look at this, I also want you to know that you do have the outline, I hope, at least accessible to you. If not, you can still participate by looking at the screen. We are going to rank ourselves and just see. 0 doesn't mean that you're a failure and lost. But on this one, it definitely needs to be more than a 0. But number 10 does not mean that you're just perfect in this area either. Anyway, it actually shows that you may have some imbalanced strengths that show themselves as weaknesses. We'll get to that. I do want to make a distinction. Don't confuse the mercy giver with the server. It's good when the mercy giver is compelled to serve by that emotion, but sometimes the server is not compelled by the unique gifts of the mercy giver to do those things that end up being a service. I'll illustrate some differences as we go. The server sees work to be done primarily. That's how they're geared. Do the work, get it done. The giver of mercy is more focused on the individual's emotions and need for support during those circumstances that need to be tended to. It's their emotional empathy that fuels their response to serve. These people are truly the heartbeats of society. Character trait number 1, they are drawn to people who are hurting. They are drawn like a magnet to these people who are hurting. They can walk in a room and sense it. The Levite and the priest, what were they thinking? Well, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. They're probably thinking that, they had more important things to do. But whatever the plans were, it just didn't get done. So the plans that the Samaritan had were put on hold for a full day at least in the story, because this hurting man became more important. It became a priority. Givers of mercy, as though they have a sixth sense, are often drawn to these people whose spiritual well has run dry. Perhaps while others don't sense the need as much or fear getting involved and just walk on by, it's the mercy givers who just can't do anything of the sort. As though they have that internal sensor they can detect when another person is in distress, feeling distraught, depressed, the pain of sorrow or loneliness, and they're drawn to help. They may not always have the techniques or the methods or the knowledge, but they'll do whatever they can because they've just got to help that person. That's great. Like I've said, we need people like this. We all need to become more like this. Number 2, givers of mercy take action to remove that hurt and distress. Did the Levite and priest merely feel sorry for this man? Did they at least feel empathy or sympathy? Well, quite frankly, it doesn't matter, does it? Because they didn't do anything. The man was sitting there in need, and as far as he was concerned, he didn't get what he needed, so it didn't matter what they thought. The Samaritan, however, did something about it. So, I'm cautious and careful to say this bold point. Just feeling sympathy, which is a great value, okay? But just feeling sympathy is not showing mercy. Even feeling empathy does not demonstrate mercy. Mercy is a value rooted in the principle of God's very nature to show love and help in time of need. This is agape love we're talking about as well. And it prompts action to alleviate the pain. Think about what God did to send His Son. That's motivated by His love and mercy to offer that forgiveness, right? We need to be like God, and mercy givers are like God in that they take action. Now, servers take action. We remember they're quick to respond to needs. But again, even though they overlap some, I do want to make a distinction. The server, the staunch only server, tends to focus on the task. Mercy givers focus on the spirit of the person during the service. For example, it hasn't snowed much here, but imagine it being wintertime and a heavy snow falls. Some people are inclined, like the servers, to say, hey, a widow's driveway needs to be shoveled. And so, true to the server's nature, they will pack the tools, plan and make the drive, and get the task done, work accomplished, yes. But you know something? You can shovel snow all day long and not meet the emotional needs of the person. It can happen that way. She'll be grateful for it, no doubt, but there's something more. And it's that something more that the mercy givers step up to the plate and say something along this line. It's these people who remind all of us they can see a person and wonder things like, I wonder if he or she in this case feels circumstantially abandoned, and perhaps has been gradually distraught or slowly saddened by the years that have stripped away her ability to do such for herself. I wonder if the weather was only an enhanced factor that reminded her of her feelings that came to the surface of loneliness because the one who used to do this task is no longer there. Now, folks, such things, such thoughts have to be trained or conditioned in some people, but not to the gifted mercy giver because it's just instinctive. They think these types of things. How are they feeling? What are they thinking? What are they going through? I know that I would be going through this, and is this how you're feeling too? The server wants to relieve the burden. Good for the server. The mercy giver wants to relieve the pain. Good for all. How blessed is a person when there is both a server and a mercy giver, and when they're blessed by one and the same, who've grown in both ways, right? How do you relate to taking action to remove another's emotional pain? 0 to 10. Never applies or always applies or somewhere in between. Number 3, similar to exhorters, and I ask you to review your notes on this, but frankly with much deeper investment, givers of mercy see value, the good in others. And I mean, it's almost like they have blinders or filters. They can't see any bad. We're not going to say the negatives just yet, but we're highlighting the good. They really see the good in others. Anybody, everyone. The Jews and the Samaritans were spiritual enemies and in every other way. Each of them thinking that the other was worthless. That's what makes this story so powerful and shocking. The Samaritans saw a person worth helping. They look for reasons to help and love. When others start to list others' faults, they are the first ones, if you've noticed, for one reason or another. Each case is different, but they're usually the first ones that remind everybody about their good qualities as well. And those conversations change in a hurry. They also make us feel shamed a little bit. And like my granddad used to say, so short and small that you could dangle your legs off of a dime. And I'm just thinking, that's how low and short you feel and humiliated when around a good mercy giver, because you might talk bad about someone accidentally, naturally, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to see the good in them too. All right, the illustration is as follows. The story is told of an office worker who simply would not get involved in bad-mouthing the co-workers. When they talked down on the boss, she reminded them that he or she was the one that gave them the job. And after they criticized one lady, she had to say, well, this person, she does get her reports in on time. They criticized another co-worker, and she made sure to say, well, he held the door open for me last week, so he can't be all bad. You know these type of people. You know them. Yep. Okay. They tried to think about someone that she could not say anything good about. And finally, one day around the break table, one person brought up the logical option, the devil himself. The devil himself. And as the joke goes, the man says, you can't say anything good about him, can you? And she tilted her head, thought for just a few seconds, but quickly said, well, one thing's for sure. If we did our job as well as he is doing his, then we'll all get a big bonus. And I'm thinking, that's just the type of people these mercy givers are. Now, I have a question for you before we rank ourselves. And I want to ask you, please, and this is in coded language if you're feeling this to the degree that I can relate. Please ignore how effective the world may have been to callous your sensitive heart and ask your true nature, how much do you naturally relate to seeing the value in others? Think hard on that one as you rank yourself. Just see where you might feel like you are. Number 4, givers of mercy are trusting because they are very trustworthy. Oh, that's rich. That's deep. They're trusting because they're very trustworthy themselves. Many explanations and excuses are commonly given as to why the priest and the Levite did not help. One logical thought is that they doubted the safety of the whole matter. The whole scene doesn't look good, doesn't look proper, it looks suspicious. The robbers could still be afoot. The person laying there could be part of the ruse. Okay? They would suspect danger. Survival instincts imply caution, so you would use your head and suspect danger. Approach with caution or don't approach at all. Better yet, right? So in other words, when you think with your head, you might not always be very trusting. The Samaritan might have taken some risks, but he was obviously trusting through it all because he trusted he'd be safe. He trusted, I've never thought about this before, he trusted the innkeeper enough to not get gypped or ripped off with his money or promise of payment later. This is an interesting idea. I never thought about it until I came across someone else's work. He trusted the innkeeper to use the funds he had given for the intended purpose and to tell him exactly how much more was going to be used in tending to the hurt man when he returned. I hope he asked for receipts, because this seems like a situation where you could easily be taken advantage of, right? I have to admit, maybe I relate to this more than I think, because I never thought about that. It's his business to tend to the need, and so he would just do what he was supposed to do, right? Mercy givers focus on helping so much that they can forget that others are conniving. And it hurts to be reminded about that. Since the mercy giver is trustworthy, they intrinsically, instinctively are trusting of others, assuming that others also intend good, unless proven otherwise. They are people of integrity, privately first, and therefore publicly, always. This is why if they commit to something, they're going to do their dead level best to get it done. And I hope that we all relate to this virtue, this principled truth of life, no matter what. But this trait is strong in the mercy giver. But they never would intend harm. They have picture of the mercy giver as having a big sign or a T-shirt that says, "I never intend to hurt you." And they're the ones that can't make a decision when they meet up, because where do you want to go for supper? I don't know. Wherever you want to go. No. Wherever you want to go, right? They don't want to hurt each other's feelings, which is a strength and a weakness at the same time. But praises are due to these people, these trustworthy people who help others so much, and they will enjoy with great richness of spirit the rewards of heaven in a place where every encountered soul will be pure and loving as well. They deserve that, and I look forward to that for them, because this world is filled with anything but sometimes. It's hard. 0 to 10, where do you rank yourself on that? Naturally. Number 5, givers of mercy follow the heart over the head. Okay, let's face it. The Samaritan did not make a logical decision. The animosity between the Jews and the Samaritans, the potential danger of the scene, the inconvenience of delaying your plans for a full day, inviting a businessman to spend your money while you are away. None of these make sense unless you acknowledge the reason that Jesus said he did all of this. The Samaritan felt what in verse 33? Compassion. Oh, now it makes sense. The meaning of the word compassion actually means to be moved as to one's bowels. Our bodies are so designed to intensely feel the physiological change whenever there are issues or stimuli that excites or frightens us. When you're feeling something intensely, how do you feel it? Usually in those sensitive areas of your torso. But the Hebrews also view the bowels as the seat or feelings of emotion and one's self, the essence of oneself in this human experience. And so it's a strong word by Jesus, carefully selected, no doubt, to let us know this Samaritan, for him, as far as he's concerned, had no other option. He was moved to do something. He couldn't just do nothing. The mercy giver. These people, oh wow, are great. Those who are prone to logical thinking, maybe the leaders of the bunch that we talked about earlier, those who are rational thinking, quick decisions, they might be prone to look down on these people for wondering, how could you not think about that? And they could say the same, how could you not feel this way? That's interesting if that's in the case of a husband and wife. But we learn each other, and we grow, we balance each other out. It's a challenge for people who are not mercy givers to not be sinfully critical on how these people use their heart over their head. We have to remind ourselves of this. The priest and the Levite were the only ones that were actually using only their head, and they weren't painted in a good light because they didn't do what needed to be done. Many good deeds are done because of mercy givers. They're compelled by compassion. Good for you. They have a lot of strength. They have a lot of great qualities. maybe more evident than any before, these strengths are their weaknesses. Let's enjoy rewording some of these for our understanding. If these characteristics relate to you, then good. We need people like you. The congregation needs people like you, maybe more than it realizes. The struggles, though, are very real. I've heard it said that wisdom is found in points of balance. That is so true in every point of life. So those exceptionally gifted in Area 1 will likely face the struggles of Area 2. If you ranked high, you might relate to these. And we'll use a variety of examples to explain. Number 1, they often fear conflict. They often fear conflict. Was Abraham gifted in this way? He's a unique individual. He has a blend of a lot of traits, no doubt. But is this perhaps one of the reasons he was the peacemaker in Genesis 13 after the turmoil of his and Lot's servants regarding over the choice of the best land? And he was the one that says, you go ahead and take the best. Now, there are a lot of positive traits, but was this one of the reasons why he acted and made that decision? When Lot was taken captive by the 5 kings, was it compassion that compelled him to take those risks and show bravery in this way? Genesis 14. The rescue wasn't easy. I should say it was scary. When God was announcing that he would destroy Sodom and Gomorrah in chapter 18, merciful Abraham kept begging God to lower the number of righteous souls to find to spare the destruction of any innocent, so-called innocent righteous person. That mercy, that love, probably compelled that bargaining as well. Abraham had a degree of boldness and bravery, but it was interesting. We see also in him a unique fear. Twice he feared the conflict over his wife, afraid that Pharaoh and Abimelech would want to kill him in order to have his wife, because he even compliments her beauty, but then comes up with a plan and voices a plan that basically says, it's a lie, but I also want to save my own life. I'm not sure how she reacted to that. But I look at this in so many ways. Generally speaking, mercy givers are wired to alleviate, prevent, and avoid anyone from feeling pain or discomfort, and even their own. So they tend to avoid even necessary conflict in day-to-day interactions, the necessary conflicts that would result in long-term blessing, because they absolutely dread the uncomfort time of that moment. And of course, we all relate to that to some degree. I do to a great degree. But they sure struggle to know when it is necessary, because they don't want any of it. Ironically, the efforts to prevent pain in others cause their own as well. Givers of mercy, it may even hurt the merciful heart to hear this. They can often be gullible. They can. It's hard to admit certain things. I know it's like, it hurts, but it's there. Why? It's the result of being strong in something. Weaknesses are actually strengths carried to an extreme. Illustration, despite Abraham's faith in God, he allowed his wife to talk him into a terrible plan that she didn't even think through, and instantly backfired, Genesis 16, 1 through 6, with consequences to this day, I might also add, to give her children through Hagar, who she would instantly hate because of jealousy. Well, naturally. I've tried to imagine from time to time why, even the culture of the day, it adds to the confusion. Why didn't Abraham just say absolutely not and stick to his guns that way, but simply said he fell in line with the plan? And when the strengths of trust is carried to an extreme, coupled with not wanting conflict, they can be swayable and even gullible. The very ones who want to offer help are taken advantage of, submitting to bad planning when things always suddenly change more than what you expected, right? And with just wanting to please others, even put others through the pain of unwelcomed inconvenience, because this other situation just had to have help, which will surely cause conflict. Folks, it's hard for people who think with their heart to hear legitimate concerns. It's hard. And this is where I go back to wondering just how much of my own soul was either conditioned by ministry or always that way. I don't really know anymore on this one, but I know that My heart wants to help everyone. I get into ministry for that purpose. One of the congregations I worked with, I learned it very quickly. The Lord blessed me with youth, ignorance, and protection to learn very quickly that what people say that they need is not always what they really need at first. It's tough saying, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Givers of mercy can tend towards sadness and depression. Have you ever considered your brother in this respect, or our fellow brethren in this way? And if not, if you relate to this, you're going to be happy when others hear this point about you, because it feels like we're talking about you in this case, and I feel the same. Those with tender hearts are driven to help people. They struggle to stay happy. They know that their happiness is rooted in the word of the Lord, and that's the only way. But why did Paul's inspired pen in chapter 12, verse 8, encourage the mercy givers to, quote, keep giving cheerfully or with cheerfulness? Why? Why would he add that? Inspired, I think it's because he knew that these people are so in tune with their pure feelings and godly emotions and intent, genuinely. They want all things to be good. But in this sin-saturated world, everywhere you turn, they see only always often hurt. They want to see justice. That's a big one for me. They want to see justice, but they so often see injustice and ignorance and hurt because of that. They want to see positive, but they so often see negative. They look around and they're overwhelmed. A joke, hopefully humorously wording, but some basis in reality. If you watch the news for 3 seconds, you're in a slump for 3 days because things don't measure up the way that they ought to be. They know that God is holy, but they hurt over the atrocities. And all of this can lead, if they're not encouraged constantly by our brethren, encourage and exhort one another daily, to sadness and even depression for those who are gifted with mercy. Like I've said, bless these people because we need these people. We need them, and we need to encourage them. They struggle in this life very much, very much. They can be trapped in their own melancholy if they're not careful because they do struggle in this life a lot. Their passive sadness. Paul encourages them, and in this way, Paul commands them, and it's a hard command, to force yourself to focus on the good. Make sure that whatever is pure, holy, just, worthy, praiseworthy, of good things, focus on these things. And in the process, be excited. When all looks lost, stay excited about the opportunities, present and future, that you may not see now, but God is allowing you to work and help, even if you don't see the results. Obviously, with passion, I relate to these emotions so much, we have to remind ourselves that it's all about God, and He's blessing us. Number 4, givers of mercy can easily be hurt by others. Obviously, but it's a very real struggle. Chapter 12, verse 4, chapter 16, verse 2. It's hard to make sure that our callus grows around the heart to make sure it's fortified, protected, but not to grow within the heart, lest it become hard and cold. I see Job as a mercy giver. That's probably one of the reasons he was such a godly man and was allowed to go through so much and taught so much. As a loving patriarch, chapter 1, verse 5, he was offering sacrifices for his grown children. In chapter 29 and chapter 31, he was demonstrating mercy to the poor, to the fatherless, to the widowed. Merciful people become more vulnerable when suffering because it's their natural bent to pick up on signals, and so when they give them, it should be pretty evident. And it's not always evident to those not so gifted or trained. Job's friends, he opened himself up to his friends. He trusted them, and they stomped on him. They said some foolish, stupid, hurtful words. Job chapter 12, verse 4, chapter 16, verse 2, feel free to read those words. A taste of his anguish and hurt from his friends. The merciful, or the giver of mercy, is so in tune with others' emotions and their feelings that they so often are very vulnerable with their own. This is part of their nature, and it's not easy. This is a good thing, though. And yet the challenge is that it often makes their pain much greater when hurt or betrayed. Sadly, the lesson so often taught by a calloused world is that it's safer to just not express yourself. And this is the worst thing to do because it's against your nature. This is the necessary part where we have to come in and help our brethren. This is a strong message to us to not be so inclined to ignore, but to focus on their needs different than ours. Prioritize the spirit of others, that we speak only what is edifying and beneficial. When everyone's gathered in an assembly, people are being blessed on levels far differently than even your experience of worship, but it's very important to make sure you speak only edifying words to everyone all the time. The mercy givers that you talk to along the way will receive tremendous benefit, and that's not always met. It's a vitamin nutrient that's the Spirit is starving for. Ephesians 4:29. Number 5, another challenge or weakness, or I should just say a struggle of the compassionate, is that they can allow feelings to override knowledge. Again, this is a strength. It's a challenge. It's a blessing to be in touch with your feelings and even to let them wisely influence your decisions, which emotions are a factor. You just can't ignore it. Emotions are real. But if taken to an extreme, the mercy givers can completely ignore important facts. It's almost like they evaluate it and they value the emotions more than the facts in times where maybe they shouldn't, and that's not easy. It's not easy. Job expressed, now get this, his deep feelings for 18 chapters of poetry. He's a passionate man. He's going through a lot. His feelings for 18 chapters. After all of this expression, how does God describe this? He says Job is darkening counsel by words without knowledge. I don't know if I would want God to say that to me, but I think God is sovereign in the situation of the book. I understand what's going on better than even he did, obviously, at the time. I believe in God's sovereignty. He knew what Job would experience, and he was allowing that. He knew it was natural, but to the point that giving full weight to emotions even causes him to lose sight of other important things like God's immanent power and divine nature, his propriety. Job admitted this in chapter 42, verses 2 through 4. Case in point, in our emotion, which is a factor, we can't ignore the facts. I'm jumping ahead of myself, so I better not. I'll just stick with the plan. There's a reason for that. If you struggle with these, because of your merciful heart, take comfort in knowing that you have a place here at this congregation. We need you more than you might know, and you are very much appreciated. You do, obviously, like all these others, have much room to grow. Get excited about that, because the more you grow, the more effective you can be in reaching to the people who need help, yes, and want and to receive help. That was one of my greatest disappointments, is to realize not everyone wants the help you offer at the time that you offer it. But you can grow. And as we'll talk about next Wednesday, be more discerning without losing your feeling. That's encouraging. You can grow without losing your feelings and be more discerning. Opportunities for the giver are plentiful. I want to list a few or mention a few, and you can make notes if this applies to you. In the congregation, think about prayers, prayer groups, prayer chains, foreign mission gifts, teaching on the subject that you're very gifted in, helping in service work, and getting involved in benevolence. One-on-one activities can include hospitality, visiting the sick, the shut-in, the elderly, the widows, letters, cards, notes. Be a listening ear. Let everyone know. They'll learn that, hey, I just want to talk to somebody. Call this person. Be a listening ear. Weep with those who weep. Support those with good counsel. Because you speak their language, you're not going to probe. You're just going to listen. Some evangelistic opportunities include prayer. With your gift, go to the hospitals when you can, nursing homes when you can, and listen to the neighbors and co-workers. Volunteer work, helping the beaten, broken, and the battered. Food pantries, shelters. There's a lot of ways to show mercy. Here's one idea I came across: assisting a teacher. You know, the teachers who are really, really gifted with the observance of facts, academic details. Here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's what you need to know, here's what you need to do. Do it. Provide balance for those people. So, teach them mercy. Improving our mercy. How can we do this? Well, you know the first one. Become friends with someone so gifted. We can learn best by being around someone who's really, really good at it. Spend time in your feelings. This is the one I almost got ahead of myself on. Spend time in your feelings. People run from their feelings one way or another. It's like they're not comfortable in their own skin. Terry married a person that I'm one of these guys that I want to understand myself. I will explain everything about myself. And 5 hours later, making sure that she, relates and understands, and then that's how she feels. In some ways, the roles are reversed, but in good ways, of course. One thing about it, I want to be transparent. Spend time in your feelings. Many people run from them so much that they would not be able to answer what is to me a simple question, at least given some time to think about it. How does this make you feel? Ooh, I didn't realize how scary of a question that is to some people. They're like, I don't know how I feel. I'm hungry. What do you want to go eat? They avoid their feelings. But folks, to get better at recognizing the emotional feelings and needs of your brethren, spend time in your own feelings, because many of those in shared human nature relate to other people. Your experiences might not always be the same or thought pattern, but the feelings are there. If you're sad, I encourage you to go ahead and sit there in your sadness. No distraction. Feel it. Understand it. Perhaps soon call that merciful friend that you're connected with and talk about it, because you'll be safe to do so. Or journal about it. Ask and answer yourself questions like these. How am I truly feeling? What is it about that made me feel this way? What caused those feelings? Why is it affecting me like this? Why? And then what also is a good godly response to this? Oh, these are good questions. You can spend hours thinking about them, and I encourage you to spend that time. It will bless many others in the process. I only have to say, before any lesson is written or crafted, conversations 101 are completely different, but I do always think, how will this person hear it? If I say this message, how will that person hear it? Eventually, what is finally presented hopefully will be a blessing to all. But that's one of the reasons why. Look for the good in others. Here's a good help for all of us. Look for the good in others. This maintains love. And by the way, love fuels those acts of mercy. No love, no mercy given. Look for the good. When you catch yourself, when criticisms start creeping in, even if they're true, don't leave the spot until you force yourself to rewire some scripting and programming up here and acknowledge something praiseworthy as well. Start thinking like a mercy giver. Number 4, don't condemn the hurting. Don't condemn the hurting, because it's not always their fault. In fact, it's often because of their gift, their strength. So no, they're not always overreacting or deserving of the pain that they are feeling, because they, as we would sometimes want to say, certain people would just say, well, you've just, this person over here is suffering because they're either sinned or they're not matured enough. And then they write it off and move it on because they don't want to feel with them. This is not good. Frankly, Job's friends were not very spiritually mature. And I want to highlight this point. Those who are spiritually struggling might actually be very strong, godly people. Job is the main character of the book for a reason. Do we see poor people and assume that they're just not hard workers? I hope not. Do we see the oppressed and think that they're just not aggressive enough in their life and that's why they're struggling? Poor them, but let's move on with our lives? I hope not. If you're too quick to find a reason for condemnation, here's a helpful suggestion. Don't. Instead, think like a mercy giver and start finding a way to help, if at all possible. And then 5th suggestion to help us improve in this, as we really get to work and meet new people this year and share the gospel, put yourself in others' shoes. As I like to say, wear their prescription glasses. See how they see the world. Mercy is not the same as empathy, but mercy is more effectively shown after first feeling what another feels. It can be more targeted and refined. I was bragging to Lucian earlier about how a book I've often quoted, but I finally finished it, the audio version, of course, while driving, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a story in this book that I remember where I was when I heard it, and I thought, ooh, that's good. And about 4 weeks later, I'd like to share this story with you. He uses the term paradigm shift. It's when you're living by your values, you do what you think is right, but then something happens that causes you to adjust your understanding of the layout of the land and how the principles of God and nature work so that you can adjust and grow. And in his book, Stephen Covey writes about a time when his paradigm shift adjusted and it produced empathy in him. And this is a story that he heard. He was riding the bus when a man got on with 2 extremely rowdy kids. And he speaks these words. They were all over the place, in the faces of others, making noise, generally causing a nuisance. The man wasn't doing anything about it. Okay, we've been there. We understand how that feels. Folks all around were grumbling about it, casting furtive, secret, sidelong glances at the oblivious man. Finally, someone had enough and went to the man and said, "Sir, you've got to do something about these kids. They're causing a ruckus for everyone." The man looked up as though from a fog and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not with it right now. We're on our way home from the hospital. You see, their mother just died, and I guess they don't really know how to handle it. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I do either." Whew. Okay. That news stopped the grumbling, and empathy abounded with questions like, what kind of bad day must they have had? What kind of financial trouble might this lead into for them? How will this affect them in upcoming months and years? What kind of help might they need? Folks, without seeing the moment through that person's glasses, they had no clue what was happening. And here's a key note. Mercy givers love to find people who speak their language, and we can learn a lot from them. So in the process, I would encourage you to speak their language. Less probing, more feeling. They can detect those words. In conclusion, with us practicing all of these things, I hope you've been honored tonight if you relate to this. Thank God for those people with this gift. If you have that, thank God for you. And we want to thank you with this gift because we all have a lot to learn from you and from each other. Next week, we have only 2 classes left in this quarter series. Yeah, down to that. The gift of discernment. I'm looking forward to that one very much. Thank you so much for your time. Lucian has some announcements that will be pertinent to the congregation, and at this time I will turn it over to him. Thank you so much for your time.
We do want to thank you for joining us tonight.